Right. Let's get into this, man. I just had a great conversation with a real solid brother, and we're talking about a number of things. You know how you just catch up with somebody and it's been a while and you just talk to them about a bunch of different stuff and different things come up. I love those kinds of conversations. I love those where they're eclectic, where so many different things come into play. And so this one we talked about a little bit, but this is something I've been thinking about a lot because of I am a pastor who does a lot of counseling as well. And in doing that, there's a lot of things that you come up against. You're doing a lot of helping people process different challenges they have and so forth. And I'm sure many of you are aware of this. I can't remember what year this book was released. It was called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And the book has sold like 11 million copies. It's been a really good resource for helping people understand how to connect with and love and what kind of love people need. You know, sometimes we do things to serve people based on what we think is best for them, but it might not always be what they like. So this book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages, has been a hit, if for no other reason, because it gives people something to aim for. You can aim at, okay, I know this person is words of affirmation and things like that, or physical touch. And so the love languages, for many people, help them kind of process the way that their significant other, spouse, maybe even a child, whatever, needs to be loved. There's a challenge, though, with the love languages. Here's one of the main challenges and why I'm making this particular video today. So one of the challenges with love languages is that so much of it is based on the person expecting you to love them in the way that they want to be loved. So once you're aware of this, if you know that words of affirmation is what's supposed to be the love language of your spouse or whatever, then their expectation is you're going to continue to do that. You're going to love them in that way. Here's the challenge, though. When you don't do that, when they don't receive that from you, they can become offended. And it can cause conflict because, in a sense, you know that this is what I like. So if you have a spouse that has like acts of service, and so, you know, if your husband, you're married and your wife, she acts of service is big to her. So she's at work and you were off to that day, and she was hoping you'd vacuum the house and you didn't. She could be offended because you didn't do her love languages. And so while love languages are great, one of the main challenges for them is that they create, in many ways, a sort of happy wife, happy life ideology, right? Which the goal is to love the person and to make them feel loved and happy and so forth. And I haven't read the book, so let me just say this. So he may address this in the book. As a counselor, though, it's a rare occasion that I'm sitting in front of a couple or any kind of interpersonal relationship where the people are offended because they're not getting the love language from their spouse. Maybe that's what's happening internally, but it's a rare occasion that people are in conflict, particularly husband and wives. I've never sat with a couple that said, he knows my love language is physical touch and he doesn't do it. Or she knows that I like words of affirmation and she's not doing it. And so now I need to open up the book and walk them through the chapter and how to do that. That's never happened to me. A lot of times when I'm counseling someone, they're hurt, they're offended, they're angry. And when you're offended by someone, you don't want to show them love, right? So the love languages is a great resource when everything is clicking. But if you don't love that person the way they want to be loved, they get offended, and then you're less likely to love that person. So this is no shade on the book. Great job. But in my counseling experience, I think that the 5 anger languages is actually equally or more important to understand, because anger is not one size fits all. And usually when you're angry at someone, the last thing you're going to do is try to do their love languages, right? So again, it's great to have that knowledge, but it can create a happy wife, happy life. And I'm using that as an ideology. It doesn't have to be women. It could be men who think, hey, my wife's job is to love me according to my love language. And if she doesn't, then fill in the blank. I sit in front of people all the time who are not arguing over love languages, but are hurt beyond that. So I want to talk a little bit about the anger languages, and I'm calling it the 5 only because that's kind of the category in which we think about these things. The 5 love languages, the 5 this, the 5 heartbeats, the 5 this, whatever, the number 5 at McDonald's, whatever. There may not be 5, but we're just going to look at a few of these today, all right? We're going to look at the 5 hurt languages. So here's the thing. With the love languages, these are ways that people want to be loved. They're not the ways that those people love, though. So you could be like, okay, I like words of affirmation, but I don't affirm other people, right? That's not the way you express love. That's the other challenge with the love languages. It's about how a person receives it, but what about what you give, how you do things? Well, the anger languages is about how you relate to other people, not how you want them to relate to you. It's a bit different. And I find myself in counseling situations trying to help couples deal with this more than love languages, to be honest. So let's look at the 5 hurt languages. And again, there's more than 5, but we're going to just look at some of these. Some of these will be obvious, but here's one. First one, anger. Many people see anger as an isolated incident, like you got a short temper, you just blow up, or you're cold, or whatever it is, right? Anger is sort of its own vibe, and there's so many different drop-down menus that you could really call it the 5 anger languages, if you will. There's a lot of that, right? But the reality is anger is a hurt language. Anger is a hurt language. A lot of times when we're hurt, our feelings are hurt, when we feel rejected, when we feel misunderstood. Anger is often a response of someone being hurt. Now, this is important because we don't usually think of anger as that person feels hurt. We think of it that person's just angry, or they're just offended, or they're just selfish, or whatever it is. You know, they're trying to protect something. In my experience, particularly with husbands and wives, anger is a hurt language. It's a way that when I'm hurt by you, when I'm offended at you, when I feel rejected by you, I seek to hurt you. And it has a variety of ways. So that hurt can look like yelling at someone. It can look like vengeance. I tell you what, we're all grown, so I'm going to say this. A lot of times, struggles like pornography in a marriage are usually not that a guy, if it's a guy who struggles with it, it's usually not that a guy prefers another woman over his wife. That's usually not, in my vantage point, what happens with like pornography and lust and masturbation and those things. What usually happens is, and this isn't justified at all, but what usually happens is someone feels rejected. They feel rejected by their spouse. And part of a vengeance is to pursue that, is to give themselves over to lust and those types of things. That's what happens often in a relational dynamic. It's not even like, oh, I'm not attracted to my spouse, I'd rather have this woman. It's more, I'm hurt and I'm offended by my spouse, and therefore I'm in vengeance. I'm giving in to that, because not everyone's a yeller, right? But anger is a hurt language. Bitterness, keeping a record of wrongs. It's not isolated from, I've been hurt by this person and I'm refusing to forgive them. I remember it. Now, there's a difference between I remember something and I'm keeping a record of wrongs. So let me make sure that's clear, because I've seen couples, I've even done this, fight with my wife over remembering something, right? Remembering an event is not the same thing as keeping a record of wrong. I just remember that this happened. I remembered where we were. I remember what was said. I remember what dress you had on. I remember it. That's not keeping a record of wrong. Keeping a record of wrong or bitterness is I'm emotionally holding against you whatever was done to me in that memory. It's sort of bitterness is like the memorialization of pain, of my hurt. Let me memorialize it. Let's build a monument almost and just constantly remind myself that you've hurt me. That's keeping a record of wrong, bitterness. That's a hurt language. Anger is often a hurt language. It's not just, an explosion for no reason. That person's usually hurt. All right, now this one could fit under anger, but this is another one. Withdrawal. Man, withdrawal is the introverts yelling, right? Where extroverts are more like, we're gonna get it out and talk about it and say it and more. The introvert is like, I'm not saying nothing, but I'm hurt and I'm going to withdraw from this person. I'm not going to talk to them. So it's what we call, another way of calling it is giving someone the cold shoulder. That's a hurt language. That is a hurt language. Oftentimes that person has been hurt by this other person, and so they withdraw. And it's important this is probably one of the more obvious hurt languages. Most people don't think of anger as a hurt language, but they see the action of withdrawal as sort of like, all right, something's wrong. Are you okay? I'm getting the culture. That's one that people usually pick up on, but it is a real hurt language. It's I've been hurt, and sometimes they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to process it. So it's like withdrawal. The reason why that's dangerous is because the other person doesn't get to work through it with you, because the withdrawal becomes sort of a punishment, almost like a vengeance, like I'm moving away from this. So that's another hurt language that is largely misunderstood. Sarcasm. Boy, this is a hurt language. Sarcasm is often a self-righteous, funny way to say negative things about a person. So when I'm counseling people, sarcasm, even if it's funny. Look, I'm a guy that likes to crack jokes. I crack a lot of jokes. I like to be funny. But I learned it a while ago. Sarcasm is a hurt language. It's sort of a passive aggressive way of saying this person hurt me. They don't want to say it. They're not going to yell. They're not going to withdraw. They got too much, but they're going to let you know you hurt them. It's a way of saying something that's negative, that's probably true, in sort of a self-righteous way, or it's sort of like a way to make fun of you but not really confront you. Sarcasm is a real hurt language. Be careful. Now, some people are just sarcastic in general, but if that's every once in a while you should ask, hey, what was there anything behind that sarcasm? Is there something that you're not saying? Is there a way that you feel like I need to improve because you keep saying this or you said it this way? Sarcasm is a smokescreen for I'm offended at you. You hurt me. All right, another hurt language, big one, complaining and comparing. Complaining is often just comparing what they don't have versus what they wanted, right? But complaining and comparing hurt languages. When you complain a lot, oftentimes sometimes it can just be you're selfish or whatever, but there's a lot of hurt especially between interpersonal relationships like marriage, where people, when they're complaining or they're comparing stuff, they've been hurt by you. And you have to watch out for that and not just be offended that someone's complaining or whatever. I know there are times, man, I just was dumb, just arrogant, assuming that my wife's complainings were just her being selfish and not realizing that there's hurt underneath that complaining. This is all stuff I'm telling you, man. I don't know how much you do this, but when you sit down and you talk to people, this stuff gets real. It gets real fast, right? So you get that. You got this complaining. And then one other one, fear. Fear is a real hurt language. When sometimes it's fear of being wrong, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of not having control, fear of facing the truth, fear of being seen as weak. Like I know some people who are afraid of or fearful of having conversations because they've been hurt. They don't want to humble themselves. They don't want to put themselves out there. You'd be surprised how many times that you have to work through fear and helping people get to a place where you got to share these fears. You got to share this stuff. You're afraid, you got to share it. I'm telling you, I'm grateful for books like The Love Language. It's cool. It's great. But it's the hurt languages that cause the most damage in a marriage. And if you don't understand why a person that you care about is actually hurting and how they're expressing that hurt, oh my gosh, you're going to misread so many things in your relationship. And then you'll be tempted to go after these things and be offended at the wrong things, when in reality, this is the way that they've been hurt. And it's important to notice, because we take our cues from stuff like, oh, the love languages, or when someone's this, or they say that. It's like, listen, Jesus said this: out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. This is why sarcasm is a huge one. Sarcasm is a big hurt language, because, like, you ever had someone do this, right? Either maybe they drunk a little bit too much, not even like twisted, but just like, I'm a little bit loose, and they said some hurtful things. And then they say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. Whenever people say stuff and they say, I didn't mean it, I say, no, you meant it. You didn't mean to say it. And you may not have meant for me to be offended by it, but you meant it. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So circumstances reveal what's in there and all of it. So you got these 5 hurt languages. You got anger, right? You got withdrawal. And some of these overlap. You can with these, a lot of this stuff can drop down menu with anger. You got sarcasm as a hurt language. You got complaining and comparing as a hurt language. And you got fear or being afraid. These are hurt languages that people have, that if you don't recognize these things, it'll be hard to work through. It'll be hard to see this as a reality. So if you're in this situation, what do? And I've talked about this before. Here's the solution. You got to learn to have redemptive conversations, right? And make redemptive observations. And this doesn't happen. Often when we're angry at people or we're hurt by them, we just want people to know, you pissed me off. And I'm angry because you said and did this. And that's where it becomes. But a lot of, as believers, if you're a genuine believer, then the conversations that you have are redemptive. So you're not telling someone, your spouse or your coworker or your sibling, hey, you pissed me off, or you're angry at this and I'm angry. You tell them it because you want to figure, okay, how can we get to a point where we know that this is a problem and we try to avoid doing this? So there's a couple of things that the Bible says. I'm going to say these really quickly. That one, Matthew 7:3, right? You take the log out of your own eye, right? So every person who's ever been offended, if you're angry at your husband right now, or your wife, or your children, or your boss, any relationship, your dog, right? If you're angry or hurt by someone, you have to remember that you have also hurt them too. And that there is I'm not even talking about being a Christian right now. There's no relational dynamic that exists in this world where a person has not hurt another person that had to be forgiven. I'm not even talking about Christianity. Just people, not even hurt people. I actually hate that phrase. But we're going to offend people, and we've been forgiven for offending people. You do not have any relationship in your life right now where you haven't offended that person or they haven't offended you, unless they were a newborn baby or something. And even then, they ain't going to sleep. And then you're going to be offended because they keep crying. But that's a different conversation. Every relationship has been hurt and forgiveness has happened, and you've participated in it. So if you're going to have a redemptive conversation, you have to recognize and remember, okay, I may not have been the one who initiated this conflict or whatever we're in right now, but I've offended either this person, God, or someone else and have had to be forgiven. You have to approach it. I can tell you this. Let me tell you this right now. I tell couples this all the time. If you don't approach a situation thinking, where am I wrong in this situation? It'll never work. I'm not talking about who started it, who does it more. I'm just saying, where am I wrong? Where have I failed my wife miserably at times because I just focused on the fact that she initiated it, or she's not as mature as me, whatever it is, whatever I've thought and said. I failed in resolving things at times because I'm concerned with the wrong things. I wanted to know, I'm offended. She said this. She didn't have to say this. I'm tired of hearing it. Whatever it is, it's not redemptive. I have to approach it like, you know what? I failed my wife miserably and she's forgiven me. I've sinned against the Lord more than she sinned against me, and I've been forgiven by him. I got to have that mode when I'm bringing this you got to have that perspective when you're bringing to someone's attention to have a redemptive conversation. You have to remember you have a log in your eye. And then secondly, the way you have a redemptive conversation is James 4. James 4, 1 and 2 is the game changer. He says, what causes quarrels and fights among you? Is it not your passions that are at war? You desire and you do not have, so you murder, right? So you have to think, okay, so when you bring it up, you don't start with, hey, I'm offended because you said this and that. That's going to put a person in the defensive position. Anytime my wife comes at me like that, I'm defensive. I'm not even trying to be defensive, but now I'm just in a defensive position. It could be my own fault, my own pride, my own arrogance, but it's real. It is what it is, right? So I want to try to make sure that I'm not offending a person. So you come in like this. Hey, listen, we got into this situation. This was said. This is what was going on in me. I was hurt and I was offended because I wanted this. James says, what passions, what desires are at war within you? So it's not what the person said or how they said it. They may have ignited the war, but what you wanted. So you got to think about, what is it that I wanted to happen that didn't happen, right? Maybe I just wanted to not be talked to that kind of way. Maybe I felt like I don't deserve this or that. I didn't want that. And then they did it and now I'm offended. You can't say it's their fault. It's passions that are at war within you. So when you approach a conversation, when it's redemptive, it's, hey, I want to talk about how I acted in a way that's contrary to the scriptures and let you know that this is what triggered that, to use that language for me. That's a redemptive way of saying, here's where I fail. So my personal language, I'll say something like this. Hey, babe, I just want to tell you, I just want to ask you for forgiveness. I failed in honoring the Lord and being patient with you because when you said this or when I thought you meant that, I wanted, and I make it about how I failed instead of what you did, what you said, that I'm angry at you. It's a totally different conversation. I start with, because listen, even if someone picks a fight, if I fight back, you've crossed the moral line that Jesus gave. And so it's not, oftentimes when I'll sit in front of couples and they'll be angry and I realize that, okay, they're speaking from anger. This is a hurt language. This is it. This is that. And I'll just say at some point, all right, you're both right. Now what? You're both right. You're both right. Now what? Now what do we do with that? It's not about being right, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. It's just about, hey, listen, I'm hurt. Here's the way I express that hurt. And I need to have a redemptive conversation where I'm taking ownership of what I've done so that we can go after this and try to avoid this dynamic together. That's what you do. But I do think the hurt languages is a vastly misunderstood concept. And I think it needs to be broad. I'm actually considering writing a book. If I do, y'all give me that Gary Chapman love. I want 11 million copies. I'll split a couple of dollars. I'll take you to dinner. But I think this is a really diminished reality, and I think it causes more damages in marriage than the lack of love languages. Again, I've never sat with a couple that were upset because the love languages weren't being pursued. Nah, it's usually the hurt language is being interpreted and causing a lot of effect. So that's just, what do I know? I'm just an ex-street dude trying to be a pastor and help people, including myself. So listen, if you like what you heard here, like and subscribe to the channel. If you don't, thanks for watching anyway. I appreciate you. Thanks for the comments. If you all getting to me and encouraging me, it's been very encouraging to do these videos. I got a couple of crazy joints that I'm going to come up, but this is one I feel like I need to also deal with this, not just theological insights, but this is one that just like as a counselor, the hurt languages are real and they cause a lot of problems. So we need to talk about it, have redemptive conversations and figure it out. Get to me on Twitter if you want to talk. Respond in the comment section. I'll get back to you. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.